Hello, and welcome to Talking Shop, a series of fun conversations with consummate concert artists, composers, opera singers, and choreographers, my very favorite people in the entire universe. Today, I am so honored to have Konstantin Souhovetsky with us. Konstantin is a pianist and a composer, an original creative force among pianists of his generation. He concertizes in the US, Africa, Asia, and Europe, gaining audiences' tributes and critics' accolades. He is the recipient of 17 awards and the winner of top prizes at the Cleveland, Naumberg, and UNISA competitions. The New York Times praised his debut at Lincoln Center's Alice Tully Hall as Romanticism so intense it warms up Phillip Glass. Konstantin recently made an album titled Yulia with Sarah Moulton Faux. This album is the art songs, the previously undiscovered art songs of Julia Weissberg Rimsy-Korsakov. The album is currently available on all streaming platforms and is up for Grammy consideration. Konstantin, it's so wonderful to have you with me today.
Thank you, Lisa. It's great to be here.
Konstantin and I met at the Del Mar International Composer Symposium in August of 2024, and it was such an honor for him to perform the piece that I wrote for that symposium, my trio for piano, violin, and cello. So it's just really a special treat to have you here today. So I'd like to start off with the first question I ask all of my guests, and that is, what does being a composer and a pianist mean to you on a personal level?
Well, it's part of my identity. That is what I've done my entire life. I started composing and playing the piano approximately at the same time. Well, probably playing the piano a little earlier, but everybody's bias says you started playing piano at 4, so does mine. I don't have recollection of myself being 4 years old, so I can't vouch for that, would have to ask my parents. But let me put it that way. I don't remember not playing the piano, but very quickly I started composing as well. I love to express my thoughts and feelings and things in my own particular language. So that's to me is inseparable.
Yeah, I love the way you phrase that, because music is a language. It's so many things, but I think people think of it as a form of expression, and it is. It's all those things, but a language, and I love that connotation because it's the way we communicate, it's the way we function in the world, and as musicians, I think other musicians can readily identify with that. So let's dig a little deeper into your story. How did you, okay, you don't remember when you were 4, totally get that. So I'm not sure you remember how you fell in love because it's something you were always doing. So I guess a better question would be, how did you feel maybe growing up as a pianist and a composer? And I'd like to hear a little bit more about the composition side, where I'm sitting here thinking a 4-year-old composing. What did that look like for you? What happened, what exactly were you doing at age 4 or 5 composing? How did things come into your head? How did all of that shape you? And how did you really know at what point, or was there some little thing that made you know that this is what you were just totally meant to do for your life? Or was that even a question?
Oh, that's a hefty question, but that's fair enough, I would say. Well, it's then I really have to sort of tell the 3D story, as I say. I am always advocating exposure for young people to the performing arts, and for that matter, fine arts. Because if you don't have exposure, you don't stand a chance.
Right.
Right. I'm not from a musical family. I mean, my family are not professional musicians, but they're musical. And my grandmother was a ballerina.
Oh,
So by saying that, I mean we had two pianos in our house, just there. And I remember my grandmother sitting down and playing the Moonlight Sonata, and my mother sitting down and singing Beatles songs and accompanying herself. And it was just a culture into which I was born. Nobody was a concert pianist, but playing the piano was a normal way of spending time
yeah.
in our household. And my both my parents are visual artists and very, very accomplished at that. And they wanted me to be a painter. They wanted me to continue the dynasty. I have a younger sister who had no choice. I always say no, she's a tremendous painter in her own right and really does love that. But so they were trying to make me be a painter, actually.
Wow.
So my affinity for being a performing artist, in a way, I had to go against my parents' wishes. They didn't discourage me from being a musician, but I remember clearly my father at some point saying, I must have been 6 or 7, he said, if you choose this path, you're really on your own. I can't help you.
Oh, wow.
Um, and because at that point he was pretty famous already. So being in the same field would have opened doors. It's like, I don't know, being, you know, Francis Ford Coppola's kid in Hollywood, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love stage. I think they say it skips generations. So I think I'm really taking after my grandmother, who always regaled me with stories of all those people out there in the dark when she was on stage. Of course, when I was born, she had stopped dancing for 30 years, and she had a second career as a books illustrator, also very successful. But when I was born, she was an older woman, of a rather substantial dimensions. Because I think dancers, especially in Russia, just they measured practically every day on the way in. And she survived World War II and famines and things. So I mean, when she stopped dancing, there was not a donut she didn't love. So, and she didn't want to stick around the theater as a choreographer. She felt that the moment she stopped dancing, she wanted to close that chapter and have completely different life, which she did. And I think back in the 50s, which is when she had my mother after she retired from stage, it's remarkable. I mean, she was way ahead of her time, So that is really just so that you understand where I come from. So so I just wanted to be on stage. I took ballet, I took acting. My first performance was reading poetry, and I liked the applause, and I read it again, and I read it again, and I read it again. Eventually, Santa Claus had to remove me from stage, literally carry me off. It was one of those Christmas shows, and so I must have been about 5 then. I somehow strangely remember that. So piano was something I was good at naturally, um, and I needed to keep practicing in order to be prevented from being made to paint. I remember when my
Good
parents
incentive.
forced me to paint, tears were going down my face.
Oh,
So I just didn't want to do it. I
yeah.
couldn't explain why,
Yeah.
but, and the more they pushed me to do it, the more I had to convince them that I'm really, excellent at something else.
Mhm.
And teachers have actually told me, and I guess my mother, that I was, prodigious. So it just sort of happened to me.
Mhm.
And but I'm very scientific in my thinking, I guess. So I started studying music theory right away,
Wow.
and
Yeah,
and
that's
that is where I started to compose, because my theory and solfege teacher's ex-husband was one of Soviet's leading film composers and a professor at the conservatory, and they had been divorced at that point, but lived in the same buildings, in the same apartments, but 2 stories apart. And he would yell at her through the balcony from his apartment down to her, checking if she was giving a lesson to me on theory, and then demand that I come up there for composition. So it was a very colorful bohemian
It sounds like it.
atmosphere. And so I discovered I love doing counterpoint. So basically at 6, I was very rapidly moving in music theory. I was like 3 or 4 grades ahead of the special music curriculum. And so essentially I just took private lessons in theory and composition, and then the school, which was a special central music school in Moscow, created a group in which there were 2 people, myself and another gal, that was called Special Solfege, which basically we were 4 years ahead of everybody else.
Wow.
So by 8th grade, I was already doing conservatory level theory, harmony, and composition, and I just nerded out on it. I mean,
Yeah.
I love math. In my other life, I would have been an investment banker, I think.
Yeah. 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 That's just such a fascinating story. And my goodness, the extraordinary opportunities you had. It was just like, the universe was coming together for you, and you were so insistent on carving your own path at such an early age, which I find really extraordinary. I think most 4 or 5 year olds would probably, just give in to the parents. That's, but I just think it's so wonderful that you had the presence of mind and the will at that age, and the emotional cognizance, I suppose, to know what you were meant to do, and present that to your parents in a way that was this, it's not here, it's here. Yeah. Yeah. So I think
Right.
that's
Well, and I
wonderful.
remember, my dad saying to me, he said, "Well, prove it." So,
Yeah.
when I started winning competitions, she was like, "Okay,
That kind of would do
I
it.
suppose you're good."
I love it. I love it. Um, so staying with the composition side a little bit, I think people hear the terms transcription and composition, and one of the reasons I wanted to start this artist talk series is because I think there are terms that people hear and maybe they don't quite know what they mean. So I love for my guests to delve a little bit deeper into what those terms actually mean, and maybe how you use them in your artistic life. So would you do that for us?
Of course, with pleasure. They're in a way, just conceptually opposite things. Um, Technically, a good transcription is a recomposition of music,
Hmm.
right? Otherwise, you're just doing a basic cover.
Right.
You probably quite aware of the fact that I make lots of transcriptions, and I've made, in a way, carved my performing career of the past 15 or 20 years, playing predominantly my own transcriptions of operas, right? But it's technically challenging because music has to be instantly recognizable as its original material, but in order for it to work and in order for it not to feel reductive,
Hmm.
in my opinion, it has to be recomposed. And I mean, really taken apart brick by brick and put back together, which means sometimes retiming, transposing,
Yeah.
changing things, etc. Of course, inventing, textures on the piano that don't exist because you have to impersonate orchestra and human voices and all that
Right.
sort of stuff.
Right.
But quintessential difference that cannot be ever blended is that when you write your own music,
Hmm.
those are the original thoughts of the composer. The
Hmm.
moment you touch something else,
Hmm.
you're regurgitating somebody else's ideas,
Yeah.
and that is why I find being purely a performer of other people's music is limiting,
Yeah.
because essentially I'm a cover band. Then all you ever do is express, excuse me, find ways of infusing bits of yourself into somebody else's thoughts.
Which is difficult, I imagine. Yeah.
Um, it has its own challenge. Look, it's marvelous too, but I mean,
Yeah.
I find that just always thinking, what did Mozart mean by this?
Hmm.
I mean, it's just not the way. It's not a complete way of existing as an artist for me.
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
Right.
the thought enters my mind as a composer myself. I have music coming into my head all the time. I sing into my voice recorder in the middle of the night sometimes. And I guess my first thought as you were speaking about this was, okay, so maybe this is instead of a melody coming to me, I'm being provided a melody by someone else, and then I'm to write the music, you know, to go with that melody. So that's probably an over reduction of the process. But I have not transcribed before, so I just wonder how accurate is that? Is that a decent analogy? Or I know there's a lot more to it, and you just said it's limiting it away. So
Well, the transcription is something where, you know, there is a pre-existing music, and
right.
usually, I mean, it's wonderful music because, I mean, why? Well, first of all, there's a lot of incredible music out there, and
Yeah.
I think people wouldn't be transcribing something they don't believe to be wonderful,
Yeah.
right? So if we go from a place of saying, I love this music, I want to, I don't know, transcribe it for piano because it's originally for voice or violin or whatever, um, then it comes with baggage of its performance practice. I mean, you already love it. It already has a
Yeah.
sound. It has rhythm and flow and tempo and
Harmonic
form.
structure too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But you
So
can only
it
change that to a
is,
certain extent, I guess.
you know, so you're basically embarking. One is embarking on a process of fixing something that ain't broke.
Yeah. Yeah.
And which is perfectly fine. It's a terrific artistic endeavor, but it's a different responsibility. I remember when I took me a year to transcribe the four last songs of Richard Strauss, which are frankly my favorite piece of music of all times,
Yes.
trumping everything else. And my main fear was that somehow it would be less than,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? I wanted to use all of my compositional weaponry to to um, to somehow give a legitimate and worthy piano solo version to the music that I really consider to be the absolutely most genius creation
Yeah.
of that ever exited human mind, right? And it's just a sense of responsibility, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when with every piece of music. I think that's how arrangers feel
Yeah.
in a, you know, crossover or popular genre. You know, when you take a Cole Porter song and you have to rearrange it for, I don't know, Diana Krall, then we all know how those songs go and we'll love them. They've been
Mm-hmm.
beloved
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
nearly a century now. Uh, it has to be new, and yet it has to not be disturbing the beloved way of hearing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just a whole different part of your brain that lights up when you have to do that.
Yeah.
It's creative, it's interesting, but it's in service of something else.
Yeah.
I sound like a total egoist right now, but I like to
No,
serve
I think that.
myself also. I
Yeah.
like to sit down, look at the empty screen or a page, because I
Uh-huh.
use both when I compose,
Yeah.
um, and say, well, you know, I'm going to compose color blue, for instance, from the Pride Suite, which represents uh, tragic loss, but also has to be hopeful. What is the sound of hopeful
Right.
in D minor?
Yeah.
And then I create something that is my, and, you know, my backstory, my feeling, my idea, out of absolutely nothing, then becomes something.
Mm-hmm.
It's for the history and other people to judge whether it's worthy or not.
Yeah.
But that is an entirely different experience, emotionally, intellectually,
Mm-hmm.
and it requires a different part of your brain to activate.
Yeah. It sounds like a tremendous challenge to me, and something I am thinking I absolutely must try. Would be a great instrument of growth, I think, for a
Yeah,
composer.
you know, it's that, but that's, we never stop learning, right? The
Exactly.
new ways, new approaches. When I as a composer student,
Hmm.
particularly when I was that young, you know, in the very beginnings, it was all like literally my composition teacher would just give me four notes, as a subject to a fugue, and I would have to write a 2-part counterpoint, then 3-part counterpoint, then 4-part counterpoint. And he was like, no, mistake, mistake, parallel fifths, parallel octaves, redo, redo, right? So I began composing as a mathematical endeavors, how to create, how to build an architect in architectural sense, a perfect counterpoint matter where there are no abandoned leading tones and no parallel fifths, etc. It's very scientific, and I found a great joy and fun in doing it as a kid. And then now, of course, I don't think in those terms.
Yeah.
They do apply when I hear certain things. I hear them. Of course, there are no rules in real art making, in the sense that sometimes you want imperfections, you want abandoned leading tones, you want unresolved dissonances, you want parallel fifths, So I'm using them, but I'm aware of what I'm doing. It doesn't just happen on its own. It's been so ingrained in my brain to kind of scan the music and instantly MRI it and know what's underneath. That it's just the way I look at all of it, mine or other people's.
I think that's one of the really amazing things. I find this about myself, all the years of music education experience performing, that I have. I mean, I just discovered I could compose a couple of years ago, and just this stuff just kind of flows out of me. I have no explanation for it. And I've traditionally been very bad at theory, but I felt that I was bad at theory, but I would go back and play some of my work. I'm like, oh, 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 it's just so funny. But I can imagine for someone like you who's had started really being in the limelight and performing so much more at an earlier age, and especially having composition lessons when you were that young, you have an even more robust arsenal of tools to use that come much more automatically now from what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of, it's just kind of built in, But your music, having played your music, I mean, it's very structural. I mean, it is very organized. It is in its architecture very clearly defined, which
Well,
which
thank you.
is fantastic. Which I think are um, which makes music accessible to listeners. You see, people don't understand why they respond one way to one kind of music and the other way to the other, and without trying to without sounding reducing it to a formula, but generally speaking, people subconsciously recognize a certain pattern.
Sure.
So life generally is a sequence of patterns. Everything around us is a
Right.
pattern,
Right.
and so when music is built on patterns, the listener, however unprepared, their body knows and recognizes it.
Yeah.
And then they become engaged.
Yeah.
And then when you break that pattern at the right time, something happens. That's why music is universal language. And they say, yeah, you don't need to explain it. Well, the reason people understand it is literally that. It's biology. It's if the music is constructed with, you know, that way. And sometimes it's with a total awareness, and sometimes it happens naturally just because somebody instinctively feels that, right? Or has performance practice accumulated of great music that basically imprints yours with the same structural qualities.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know I sound like I'm stealing the magic from everything, but there is
No, you're
science
not.
behind
I
all
think
of it. There is science behind a great, the earwarming hook in a pop song. There's a science behind, Mozart's Requiem. There's science behind Rachmaninoff. That doesn't just happen.
Well, and I don't think you're doing that at all. I think you're actually, it's quite fascinating to hear you talk about these things because, um, and especially I love that you brought in the pop songs in with the classical because there are similar elements in each. And I think the attraction of music, whatever kind of music one is drawn to, you still have that type, like, maybe the 1-4-5 structure in some form or another. Everyone recognizes that, whether they're aware of that or not. And just the scientific aspect is fascinating to me. The psychological, emotional, all of that is wrapped up in being human. And I think that's one reason that music is the universal language, because it touches all of us in a very personal way, based on our experience, just what we hear, just like what you said, scientifically, mathematically, the world is a series of mathematical equations. Let's
Right.
face it.
But the reason of why everybody universally sort of somehow, and I don't know, understands or cries, uh, when they hear the incredible opening of Lacrimosa of Mozart's Requiem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because of the establishment of this very, uh, very heavy D minor, and then you have ascending leaps of sixth in the melody and suspensions on the
Yeah.
downbeat.
Yeah.
I mean, with each suspension, people's eyes are tearing up across the
Absolutely.
globe, and
Absolutely.
that's why.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
because of the suspension
Yeah. Yeah.
on every other bar. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really not even a rocket science.
Yeah, but it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. And I don't think people hear that much. So I love that we're having this conversation, that you're giving that kind of detail. So please, yeah, it's great. Um, okay, we could talk about that all, like every topic we talk about, we could just spend days and days on. I've seen your posts on Instagram about narrative musicianship, and it's fascinating to me because I have created what I call a storied recital. Every piece I write has a story. Every piece I perform, I create a story, may or may not have anything to do with the piece or the times, but it allows me to interpret that piece, and it really does end up falling, pretty well in, it lines pretty well with I think, the music and the times and what's going on at that time. But I'm really fascinated by this narrative musicianship program that you have created, and I know that you build concerts off of that too. So would you please let us know how you came up with that idea, how it evolved, and what it is, and why you developed it, and what you do with it? I know you're doing a lot, it seems you're doing a lot more with it now, progressively. So I'd love to hear more about that.
I am the Director of Education and Community Engagement at Grand Piano Series in Naples,
Okay.
Florida, where we created narrative musicale as a new format of one of our concert offerings that has its own series at Artis Naples.
Wow.
So that is that. Well, and I just wanted to be very, very clear, right? That
Thank you.
my main full-time position is at Grand Piano Series as Director
Okay.
of Education, where we created narrative musicale as a result of my being here, and um, and I mean, it all comes down to the fact that I also act. In Moscow as a teenager, I started, acting, and then I done television and film, and I had to kind of abandon it for for the time being, when I was a competition pianist, so to speak, at Juilliard as a student, because, well, I was always told that you can't combine things. It was such a 20th century thing,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Russia. I mean, I was also singing pop. I was in this sort of American Idol style called Factory of Stars. Uh, Theater pop establishment, but no one even knew. I mean, my music teachers, I would have been probably kicked out of the school if they had known, right? But because there was such a separation of, serious academic classical musicians from the rest of uh, the people, so it was bizarre to me, because I was always a crossover kind of a person, in my just generally in my self-perception. I don't. That's why, I don't think there's pop music and classical music. By implication, makes classical music unpopular.
Yeah.
There's good music and bad music
Mm-hmm.
across all genres.
Sure.
Um, I listen to as much pop music as I listen to classical, to be honest, and I never. It's always been the same, and so I had this life of theater and that no one sort of knew, and then but I was told that in order to be taken serious as a pianist, that's all that I had to do. So when I was at Juilliard going to all these competitions, I stopped. I suspended my other selves
Mm,
because I didn't want that to potentially interfere with, the results. I mean, I remember, if my gosh, overhearing some very, important teachers and members of the jury when I first bleached my hair, or somebody saying that, that I don't look like a serious musician. So those kinds of things.
yeah.
Um, so it just sort of I was aware of that. So the moment I was out of school, I started finding way back to myself. Is um, how do I combine everything that I like to do in life? I mean, at the end of the day, we only have one shot, and I don't want
Right.
to spend it running other people's errands.
Yeah.
And so I love music and I love acting and speaking from stage. I like public speaking. I like being in front of people and saying things
Yeah.
to them. I don't like coming on stage, taking a bow, playing the piano and leaving. I feel it's incredibly reductive to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I basically no longer do that. I don't play recitals unless they're narrative musicale, right? I
Yeah.
don't not talk to people.
Yeah.
There are legions of people who don't like doing that, and I'm thrilled to allow them to do that.
Yeah.
Whilst I need to have direct and verbal exchange with the audience in order for me to feel like I'm actually fulfilling the mission of my life.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, that's a very elaborate answer of all of that. Narrative musicianship as a system that I kind of created as a course that I did teach at Juilliard's extension is basically I adapted Stanislavski's method system
Yes.
to be used by instrumental musicians um, as a blueprint to create in a world for the invented characters that
Yes.
represent the music that they play in order to make the performance more engaging, right? To
Mm-hmm.
acquire meaning from beginning through the end.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time people, I mean, we all are susceptible to having favorite spots in the music that we play. And I teach, so I know from my students that sometimes they're just sitting there playing pages and pages of stuff, waiting for this pretty melody to come in on the second subject or something.
Yeah.
And that creates these kind of holes in interpretation, right? So there's beautiful music here and beautiful music there that they love, and then there's notes in between and they just want to get through them quickly to the next one that they love.
Right.
And so narrative musicianship basically helps uh, making every note and every rest meaningful, because you have to be action specific. See, the
Yes.
difference between acting and music making is that music making is very abstract. There are no words.
Mm-hmm.
In a play or movie, whatever, as an actor, you're given lines to say.
Yeah.
Some are better, some are worse, but whatever they are what they are. So
Exactly.
an actor can say, "Oh my God, it's raining today." This way, you can say, "Oh my God, it's raining today," or you can say, "Oh my God, it's raining,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whatever the line is, you can create subtext, you can play for it, against it, you can say it like you're 25 years old, you can say it like you're 5-year-old, you can say it like you're dying.
And as a method actor student, you can create different overalls. You can
Right, of course, but you still
apply
have
different
lines to
exercises.
say,
Yeah,
so you're still
exactly.
saying stuff
Yeah.
that people understand.
Mm-hmm.
When you're playing a Schubert sonata, there are no lines to say. No one knows what this is about. No one has any clue what are you saying with
Mm-hmm.
it. Are
Mm-hmm.
you saying, "Oh my God, listen how pretty this is," or are you saying, "Oh my God, this is so serious.
Right.
Listen and don't cough," or "Please don't fall asleep"? We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in order to keep music from being
Yeah.
sleep-inducing, one has to have action-specific film happening in your imagination. You have to be somebody
Yeah.
that has a motivation. No one's just around. People come from somewhere and they're on their way somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And something has just happened before you entered the stage.
Yeah.
And you're on the mission,
Yes.
whatever that is, to redeem coupons at CVS or to save the world. It doesn't matter what the mission is, but there has to be a mission. Otherwise, you're just hanging about,
Absolutely.
right? And that is what narrative musicianship is. It's a step-by-step guide. It's, with exercises and things, is how to create
Mm-hmm.
the action-packed inner scenario, inner
Yeah.
script
Yeah.
in one's imagination, which remains secret. It should never be revealed because it's not a program for the music. It's often quite absurd. Frankly, the more absurd, the better.
Yeah.
In classical music, because you go to the extremes in order for it to read, right? In order to flip into just being poised
Absolutely.
and meaningful performance. So it should never be shared with anybody.
Right.
Just like a concept of a secret word, in method acting. Again, when you're playing, I don't know, this demo now, but you're imagining you're a chair,
Yeah.
right? If you say to people, I'm thinking I'm a chair, that's it. The performances, you will never, the magic of that particular
Exactly.
link will be gone.
Very
So
good
you can
point.
reveal what your process, right?
Uh-huh.
What you're thinking,
Yeah.
but you do, you can reveal it post factum. You can, after you've done, especially in the film
Yeah.
world, when the movie's in the can, you can say everything
Yeah.
because the
Exactly.
performance is done. That's the beauty of it, is that you don't have to do it over and over and over again. That's my special love of film, is that you don't, unlike theater or music making on stage, where you just have to do it again and again and again, and it's beautiful, but it's a whole different thing. With a finite product,
Yeah.
you can do things differently because this is it, and you won't ever be doing it again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that, and I think one of the reasons I find it so fascinating is I have become a student of method acting myself over the last, say, year and a half, and I've had severe issues with performance anxiety, and I've tried method after method, thing, tool after tool. Let me put it that way, not to confuse the terms. But method acting has been the only thing that has really worked for me.
Hmm.
And I think, method acting is stemming from Stanislavski and going into Lee Strasberg, um, a way to be private in a very public setting. And
Hmm.
um, to me, that speaks volumes. And it also, the beauty of that, in my view, is it adds a step of separation. When you're doing emotional sensory, you're reliving a really devastating point of your life or a very joyful point of your life, a very extreme level, point in your life. And you're able to observe yourself um, experiencing that. And then you can react to the emotions that you see yourself displaying there. Which is a beautiful thing. And I think what method acting has done for me, it's helped me create characters in my pieces, and also when I perform other people's, traditional classical composers' pieces. So I think it's just fascinating for us to have these two nuanced approaches to the same thing, all based on the method acting. I think that's really, really marvelous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think, it's basically, it's a kind of an acting course for
Yeah.
musicians
Yeah.
that, that I think every musician should be required to take it at a conservatory
I
level,
totally
I would
agree.
imagine.
There's so many things musicians should be required that, improvisation, composition, all these things that, you're just so tunneled still. I finished a piano degree 2 years ago, and it was just like notes, notes, notes. There was just very little even theory or, much emphasis on technique. It was astounding. Yeah.
It's all good. The important thing is to never stop learning, because
Right.
it
Right.
is it is what being an artist is all about. And actually, it's in most professions where people really excel. I have so many doctor friends who continuously educate right? They go to conferences, they do scientific research. It doesn't
Absolutely.
stop.
Yeah.
I mean, it only I mean, it stops when people kind of don't want to reach for the stars. You know, when you just say, okay, you know, I'm comfortable. I'm just gonna do this 5 days a week, you know,
Yeah.
until I retire.
Yeah.
But if people really want to continue to self-actualize in
Yeah.
whatever field,
Mm-hmm.
you never sort of stop learning or studying. Yeah, you may finish your degrees, but it goes on. You know, I
That's just the
always,
beginning.
yeah. For me, that was definitely the beginning. You know, when I got my postgraduate degree from Julia, that's when my life began. You know, that's
Exactly.
when I started thinking. So now, what do I do with all of this, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And when you have a choice, but I find, like, for instance, in narrative musicianship, there is a whole large portion of it that deals with performance anxiety
Uh-huh.
and stress of performing by transferring it over to your character.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we of course, it's sometimes terrifying when it's on your own behalf, when you're
Yeah.
standing there thinking, oh my God, you know, what will they think, or what if I flop? But if you just reframe that thinking as uh, your protagonist, whomever they are, um, you know, on stage, there's always some kind of a stressful situation. Nobody writes plays or operas about people having lovely lunch. I mean, somebody has to die at
Yeah.
the end of
Or
that,
get
right?
jilted
So,
or
I mean, there's
left at the
always
altar or
there's
something.
always a problem. There's
Yeah.
always an anxiety there,
Mm-hmm.
and so your character needs the anxiety. So instead of feeling it on your own behalf and going crazy about it, you just give it to the character, and then it becomes creative fuel, because then basically your character is in dire need of being animated. So you give them a real emotion, but you don't subscribe to it as your own stage fright. You
Right.
subscribe to it on behalf of the character in their circumstance.
Yeah. Which allows you to get lost in that process of reacting in a different way. And,
Right. And forgetting
you
about
know,
yourself and what will they think.
yeah, so your performance anxiety, I find, especially if I do my relaxation properly beforehand, um, it allows me to really focus on the music, you know, in every aspect, but even in between those two areas, that those two melodies that people love, maybe. Um, I wish we could go on all day, but I don't want to neglect a very important aspect of our conversation, talking about your album that you recently made with Sarah Moulton Faux, which is so beautiful. Oh my gosh. The art songs on this album are so exquisite. And the combination of your playing and Sarah singing, I really love your, I don't know if it was the production manager or whoever who said, you know, that the two of you were perfect for each other. She was exactly correct with that. But I'd love to hear how that came to be, how you and Sarah got together. And I also want this to lead into a short conversation about collaboration, because a dear friend of yours, Polina Naskinskaya, was here at my house for dinner last night, and she wanted me to tell you hello. So
Thank you. How terrific.
it is terrific. And we had a wonderful time with a group of musicians that are performing at the Belvedere Series this weekend. But getting back to the album, it's such an exquisite piece of work. And I really hope that people will not only download it, but will truly listen to the whole thing. And it's organized in such a beautiful way because they're groupings of songs. I mean, you can listen to just three in a set. And it's so lovely that way. It's not five or six, you know, in one. It's three. Very accessible. So even if you want to come back and listen to the next three or the next two or the next one, I love the way that album is organized, because it's just magnificent. The music, even if you sat down and listened to the whole thing. But I love how accessible it is, because in our busy lives, we have that opportunity to take, you know, 5, 6, 7 minutes and experience this, which is just absolutely magnificent. Tell me more about this album, and I know you're up for Grammy consideration, which is so tremendously exciting. So the
Thanks.
floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, it's something I'm very proud of. It's Sarah started researching and looking for new repertoire to sing during the pandemic,
Hmm.
and we've known each other for many, many years. We served on the board of Southampton Cultural Center uh, together at some point. She's still on the board. I'm on the advisory committee now because I run a Lilian Castel recital series at the center. So I'm no longer at the board, on the board. But so we've known each other, and I think we did an aria or something at our gala once, but we never really worked together. We respected each other's work from the distance, and had great friendly connection in real life. And then Sarah kind of invited me to the project. I mean, I had no idea about any of it, and I've never heard of Julia Weissberg. Uh, Growing up in Russia, and considering how plugged in I was into the conservatory world and the lineage of all these composers. I mean, Rimsky-Korsakov taught in the very classroom probably where I was being taught, some 75 years earlier. So it's just mind-boggling that her name never came up. No one knows about her. And I was in touch with some of my friends who are still there, who are now teaching there at the conservatory, right after we recorded it, and I would say, does this name ring a bell? And nobody's ever heard of her. So it is kind of shocking, and it's a gift. I mean, how often do you find 100-year-old music of that quality that has been published also? So it's not like it's not available. It's available.
It is mind-boggling.
Well, in a library, but it's just completely unheard of. And so it was just so interesting because first Sarah just sort of called me, and she said, I'm preparing and working on this project, would you get together with me? And we read through that, and we got together. And when I started playing, I recognized some of the poetry, because it's kind of like one Russian song, Alone I Set Out, is a Lermontov poem, which has been set to music a number of times, and it's a poem that is in a cultural consciousness of all Russians. I mean, we just know that poem. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best music setting of that poem. And how come that's not the one that everybody knows? Everybody knows the other one, right? And it was just so illuminating to see that music. And I love how her music changes the styles based on the language, because she spoke multiple languages. She lived in Germany. Her first husband was German, I believe. And then she married Rimsky-Korsakov's son. Of course, she studied with the father. And there was a lot of tension, I think, because the Rimsky-Korsakov family were not thrilled that their heir married a divorcee with children from previous marriage, and Jewish, and a composer. I mean, there was the whole thing of things that obviously they didn't appreciate. But she was already so accomplished on her own that she did not take advantage of her second husband's last name, right? She published under Julia Weissberg. She did not use Rimsky-Korsakov.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is probably, Sarah is right, because Sarah did real scholarly research on all of that. And Sarah says that she believes that is why she was so easily erased from histories, because she technically speaking did not tether herself to a celebrity name.
Yeah, that makes perfect
Even though she could by marriage for every reason, and it would be completely fine. Nobody would ever reproach her for that, because she was indeed married to him. Together they started the New Music magazine periodical in Soviet Union. And I mean they were very important power couple in Soviet new music. And then during the World War II she died. When Leningrad was under siege, famine. It's just dreadful, horrible story in a way. And so Sarah discovered her, and then she contacted some scholars who were one in Denmark, I think, and the other one in Moscow, and they went into libraries and Xeroxed music and sent her PD. I mean, it was an international operation, you know.
Wow.
It was like a
Wow.
multinational, reconnaissance mission, and so she has all this incredible music. And so she said, "Would you do an album with me?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course."
Of course. Absolutely.
And then it was such a pleasure working with her. And of course, the Judy Sherman is a producer of the
That's
record,
right.
and
That's what it is.
who
Yes.
has multiple Grammys, including a Lifetime Achievement Grammy she received last year.
Wow.
And so she's an absolute pro. And it's so important to record with somebody like that as a producer, when you know and trust you in the best hands possible, because you have to surrender control. Recording 15 tracks, it can be, well, it's excruciatingly difficult, honestly. But if you're not produced by somebody of that incredible stature and knowledge and experience,
Mhm.
it can be a complete disaster, because you need to move on. You have to be aware of time. You need to, when you got it, you need somebody to tell you, okay, moving on to the next one. You can't say, no, 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 I want to do it again and again and again. I mean, because this is what happens. People in the first day of the recording go for gazillion takes of searching for perfection according to their perception.
Mhm.
And then you're running behind schedule. You have 10 more tracks to record. You're tired. You're also, with the singer, you have to think about vocal rest.
Yes.
Sarah is incredible at self-managing that way. I mean, her professionalism is just wow. Like, she knew exactly which songs to record in what sequence, when to take a break, so that the freshness of the sound doesn't go away
Yeah.
over the period of the recording. Because people listen to the CD. I mean, now it lives in posterity forever, right? So it could be shuffled, it could be played sequentially,
Absolutely.
but I mean, it all just sort of sounds the same and equal. What they don't realize is that one song is recorded hour 1 of recording session, the other one is hour 8
Right.
of the recording session, and the human body undergoes a tremendous change over
Yes.
those 8 hours of musical heavy lifting, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and the same goes for pianists, but it's most evident in singers.
Yeah.
Of course, because your body is your instrument, and the body says, "I'm tired." The sheen in the voice is perhaps gone, or whatever. I just need to take a break and stretch. The piano needs to be touched up, but the piano sounds the same, whether or not I'm
Right.
I don't know, tired.
Right.
Not this. So Sarah was amazing at handling all of that, and that's why the CD, I think, sounds so consistent and so good, because we actually managed to record all of that in 2 days. We were ahead of schedule.
That's
That
incredible.
never happens.
And I can vouch for the consistency because I've listened to the whole thing, and it's yeah. That's
Thank you.
a fascinating process, and I love your quick insights into the recording process, which maybe on a future talk we can follow up and go a little bit deeper into. I hate that we're coming to the close of this. It's just so fun and fascinating. I'd love to hear. I mean, you are doing such exciting things all the time. Is there a particular project or two that you're, and not to say that you're looking forward to one thing more than another, but is there something that is really, I guess, more dear to you coming up that you'd really like to let us know about? And of course, I know people looking at your Instagram, you'll be posting about it, but maybe in the next few months, what's most exciting for you coming up?
Well, of course, the Narrative Musicale series that Grand Piano series launched here in Naples. It's at Artists Naples here, but we're thinking about taking it on the road. So
Oh, how
that's
exciting!
because
Oh,
the program I'm doing next week is called Classics in Hollywood, and in which I talk, from my personal love of film and being involved in acting. All I know, kind of have encyclopedic knowledge of all the gossip from the sets with Betty
I
Davis
love
and
it.
Joan Crawford, and because that was what I was interested my whole life. And so,
Yeah.
I've read biographies and books and watched
Yeah.
documentaries
Yeah.
since I'm a teenager. So I just know this stuff.
Hmm.
So I'm showing scenes from the movies, starting with, things like Humoresque of Joan
Oh,
Crawford,
how fabulous.
uh, which of course feature classical music in
Yes.
their soundtrack prominently.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times people don't realize that soundtrack is legitimate, fully performed classical music. They think it's movie music.
Right.
Then I play it in live. So I talk about the movie. We see like a minute. I make montages, like quick banter, best one-liners kind of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I play the music that's in the movie, which is, so this Liebestod and Humoresque, or
It's like a fabulous performance.
18th variation from Rachmaninoff Paganini. And somewhere in
Yeah.
time, most people don't realize it's Rachmaninoff. They think
Yeah.
it's a love theme from the melodrama, right?
Absolutely.
With Superman, Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's the one kind of program that always, I mean, people just love it. So I see that it should and belongs on the road. I have the same about opera becoming musical, birth of opera. That's when I play all my own transcriptions of everything from,
Yeah.
Giulio Cesare or Handel through Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
And there is a new one I'm doing in the spring about Primo la musica dopo le parole, which is the thesis, what is first, the word or the music, on which Richard Strauss's final opera Capriccio is based. And I'm playing my own transcription of the final scene of Capriccio, and then discussing talking about the subject, the thesis is, what is more important? Is there an answer? Is it a valid question?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things interest me a great deal. And I'm also kind of teasing a little idea of how Richard Strauss has this archetype of a woman, which of course is his wife, the soprano, who premiered all these wonderful roles. But, the Countess in De Rosenkavalier, the Countess in Capriccio, they're the same person,
Yeah.
and their music is written in the same key of D flat. I mean, he has this literally this ideal woman that he inserts into different compositions, and there's an arch to an arch. Anyway, it's just sort of interesting, I think.
I think it's
Um,
fascinating, and it sounds absolutely magnificent. Yeah.
so those are the program I'm really looking for, and of course, and then during the summer I'm creating similar things, but about celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States. So it's going to be kind of an Americana thing. And then I'm touring Scotland. I'm playing Rachmaninoff's Second Concerto in Scotland with an orchestra and a bunch of solo recitals, all of which feature. It'll be a Scottish premiere of the Pride Suite of my composition
Yes,
that
I
I
heard
wrote
read
for
about that
myself.
too. Yeah, yeah. Do you want to say a quick word about that particular composition? Because
Well, it's sort of the most meaningful project to date in my career, at least personally to me, because it is music that represents the pride flag, that represents individual colors of it, that has a multi-layered interpretation
hmm.
of every color. I mean, there is a universal, relationship of colors that we
Yeah,
all have. I mean, red is passion and love, and
sure,
blood potentially,
sure.
right? Or blue. I mean, the blue note, feeling blue. I mean,
Yeah.
it's related to sadness, or at least actually in an American musical idiom. And so I'm kind of playing with that. That's on the surface of the red is a tango, but it's an app tango. So I created a narrative in which a couple meets on the app. They swipe right, they swipe left, they meet with the wrong person. It's a mismatch. So your hands are in the wrong key. Then you meet the right person. Everything sounds harmonious, but the app is jingling. I phonated a famous gay app jingle. For those who are using, it's very recognizable. So the story is that people come together and eventually break up because they can't get off the app, which is a real life situation.
Yeah, Yeah.
So, for me, it's kind of art imitates life and life imitates art kind of thing. The
Yeah.
blue I wrote in my particular case, thinking about, my late boyfriend who died of cancer in 2019. So it's kind of a loss,
Yeah.
but also it's a leitmotif of love, right? So then I kind of flip. I also use the technique that I was taught so diligently early on. So I created, leitmotifs for love, loss, lust, loss, all those things. And but then I make sure that they sound so different when they're in that particular color that when I put them all together and play them upside down backwards in purple, unless I point it out, people don't realize that the color purple,
Right.
which I wanted to be like a prayer slash meditation on all of it. It's a metaphor for love and human condition, uh, and also elevation to purple. Because of course queer culture was always relegated to the margins of society. We're sort of the less than, and I wanted to reclaim the purple for it to be sacred. And so that's the meaning of purple. But every note of purple is a retrograde mirror of all the other colors.
I love it.
Just retimed. I made sure that it's not overtly recognizable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when I publish it, I will have to color code the purple in a special
Yeah.
edition. Literally, just have every bit of every motive, because even the accompaniment that sounds like an accompaniment, but it's woven out of yellow and blue and red,
Yeah.
and so there's meaning to it all. But of course, I hope that people respond to it emotionally, which they sort of seem to do, which I'm super happy, because it's been incredibly well received by the audience. And most importantly, I have all these wonderful pianists and colleagues asking for scores and playing it. So to
Yeah.
get other people to actually want to play your music, I think is ultimate validation. So
Absolutely. I know that feeling, and it's a marvelous feeling. It really, really is. Oh, I wish we didn't have to end this, but we do. Thank
well,
you
it's been a
so,
pleasure.
so much. It's been really fabulous. And I want to thank everyone who tuned in to listen to this talk. And they are ongoing. A new one drops every other Tuesday. So I'll look forward to seeing you the next time on Talking Shop.